for the photographs you're going to look at for this assignment, you are going to be exploring your depth of field. Okay, so that's the shooting mode you need to be thinking about. What I'm going to be talking about in this video is the subject matter. But as you look at these photographs, think about how much of the space is in focus, how much it's not in focus, how that affects the image. That's what you should be thinking about when you're taking these pictures. So I would recommend that you do your worksheet first and then start on with your subject matter for this week. This week's shooting assignment I have called narrative. A narrative is something when we look at a photograph and we can kind of tell a story from it. You may have done an English assignment where you look at a photograph and then you have to write a story about whatever you see in this. So these have specific qualities where they're kind of setting a scene, they're a little bit moody, oftentimes there's people in them or evidence that people just left the room, or when you wake up first in the morning, what do you see? Those kinds of things. So it involves the scenery when you have to think about what you want to include in a photograph. Okay, this is where we're starting to also think about our composition. There will be one more video about Photoshop that has to do with cropping. And we have two opportunities when we're dealing with photography to make a good composition. One is when we're shooting. The second is in post-production, and we can crop out things we don't want. But let's just concentrate right now on what to photograph. If my advice to you is kind of photograph around your house, your apartment, your work, where you spend a lot of time. And I found these images online, and you can look up these people's names. But there's something about this, I think because I've moved a lot in my life, and I've also inherited a lot of my relatives' items as they're passing on. And I'm getting older, I'm getting more things, more things. And so this to me is kind of reminds me of that. It tells me the story of all of the stuff that I have crammed in all my chests and things like that. This room, well, it kind of feels like a hotel room. There's something, kind of quiet about this composition. It's very fragmented. It's only showing us a part of the chair, a part of the window, a part of this console. But the books laying the way they are laying is very kind of interesting. Not everything is perfect, right? It looks very sterile, but then you look at the little waves in the placemat. And so there's something a little kind of off about this. But it's simple. I think one of the things that amateur photographers, the biggest mistake they make is they try to show too much information. We don't need all that information. Sometimes all we need is a glimpse in order to understand or to communicate. I really adore this image. I can feel the coldness of the room as the bottom of the window is kind of frosted up. It looks like someone was playing solitaire last night and didn't, kind of wanted to finish the game in the morning. So that, again, it's got this kind of time passing, early morning, the sun is going behind the mountains. There's just a really lovely feeling to this. Again, it's probably, it's obviously in a sunroom or some kind of room that has a beautiful view. So this is why I suggest that you shoot around your house and look at little pockets of your house. Now, this is hopefully not your house. It looks like an abandoned place, but it has a kind of narrative quality. Gentlemen, you're going to have to go through this place in order to use the restroom. So it's telling about time passing, things like that. Again, very fragmented. It's not showing us the bottom of the door. I wonder what this would look like if it was rotated and in a vertical. One of the things you have to get more comfortable with is turning your camera. Okay, we don't always have to hold it horizontally. We can shoot it vertically. Especially here, we have a lot of vertical lines that could be emphasized. But maybe the space isn't big enough. The hallway is narrow or something, and you can't back up. So you got to work with what you can. I don't know why. This is a garage door that's been painted like Mount Fuji. And I just thought that, again, it's telling a story about a place, but it's on a garage door. So I think that story is kind of interesting. So what you're looking at this, what do you feel? What feelings come around? What kind of story can you tell about the past? There's no net in this basketball hoop. This is starting to say something. And land is kind of taking over. Yeah. Also, I love that this is taken in the rain. You can almost see the raindrops puddling, and it adds to the mood as well. This photograph is very well balanced. Sometimes I may comment on your work to use your space different. You never want to just put something in the middle of the frame and then not think about the background. But here the photographer is weighing out the value of the trees, the darkness of the trees, the amount of number, the size, and it just feels very well balanced. For me, here there's more trees over here, but this big, large trees in the background kind of balance the weight of all those. This, I just, again, it's laundry. It's everyone does laundry, but we all do it in little different ways. I think I'm a little bit obsessed with the remains of buildings and houses that are around. But this overgrown house is just, to me, very appealing. Again, what did it look like before? When it was great, it looks very big, so it could have been very grand. Because it's overgrown, it feels neglected, there's a story there. There's a story there. And that's what I want you to be thinking about. What's the story? What story are you going to tell? This one, I know it's that, some people say, oh, there's power lines, you're showing too much space. But I love this. Many people live with multiple generations in one household these days. And so this looks like a grandmother that someone is taking out, so for some fresh air. It looks like a beautiful fall day. Again, that narrative is the family dynamic. Same person. Obviously the grandmother is older. What a natural image this is. Now, you have to know the people well in order to take this type of intimate photograph, because if I went into someone else's house, their grandmother would not want me to take this picture. But again, if it's your life, if you're telling the story about how you spend your day, if you take care of a baby or an elder parent or grandparent, that's your narrative. Photograph that somehow. This is what I imagine you kids do every weekend. Cell phones and friends and hanging out, but what beautiful light is going on here. And the kids seem completely they're completely ignoring the photographer. So they're very comfortable with the person taking their picture, nothing going on here. Same with kids. The trick to photographing kids is you have to have your camera out a lot. They need to get over the fact that you have a camera. Especially with digital, they always want to see what you've got. So you've got to photograph them for a long period of time, over several days, to get them like, oh, it's just Jennifer taking pictures again. It's no big deal. And by having your camera out and using it, will over a few days, people will stop paying attention to you. It's really a miraculous thing. People do like being photographed. You do have to, especially in this kind of occasion, you do need to ask their permission. It looks like this person is standing on the street photographing people on a yard that's private property, so you do need to ask. But these kids look, very confident. They're totally cool with you taking a picture. And if if they're your neighbor, take their picture. That's your narrative. Shows. Here we can see the type of their house, the type of car. They're obviously playing catch with the football. Again, it's narrative. I love this one. Again, it's a little bit centered, but the rest of the space is really active. My only thing, whoops, my only thing, I might crop this off. This looks like it's part of a chair. I might just get rid of that. I don't think that would hurt any composition. Love this. You know, take your camera when you run your errands. Take your camera, you know, wherever you go. I photograph my neighborhood quite a bit. I've been doing it for years. And images like this, these are the type of images that I take. What does your street look like? And by showing this lot, we are getting a lot of information, right? We've got the truck, we've got the camper in the back, we can see some plants, we can see the neighbors maybe, or a garage. I mean, there's a lot going on. And it's very telling. Another, you know, kind of, you have to have a good relationship or a close relationship to get some of these pictures. One thing you could do is ask your friends, oh, if you could take their picture, but say, well, take me to your favorite spot in Wilmington. You know, look at this very shallow depth of field, but it's showing water, it's showing vegetation. The palm tree kind of tells us what region it might be in. Again, very, very narrative. Family dinners. It's after dinner, you can tell, because the younger kids are on their phones and kind of ready to go, but in the older generation are all talking. And to me, this is wonderful. Wonderful narrative telling us about this family. Love this. Ooh. A little darker, but I think still visually interesting. And while this is not as specific, it has a feeling of anxiety. It's so dark, and this woman's walking into this dark room. What's going to happen? When I start thinking that, that means it's a narrative photograph. What's going on here? Narrative. Tadpoles, young, you know, mind, all of that, narrative. Driving, narrative, love it. So you can set these up. You don't have to show people, but you will need to kind of decide what you want to photograph, what you want to tell. And some of that will involve people. It might not, though. I'm not telling you what to photograph. I'm just telling you to think about the story you might come up with. Okay. These have very kind of fairy tale, the non-Disney fairy tale feel here. So that's your assignment this week. Play with your depth of field, and the subject matter is narrative.